So hello and welcome to 9 weeks later from my first video where I took you around the inside of phase 1 of the build and talked you through some of the plans, what we were doing. So as mentioned in that video, I deliberately held off uploading footage until we'd kind of got a few weeks in, because I think if I did a week-to-week update there wouldn't have been as much happening and I don't think it would have been very exciting to watch. It's been 9 weeks. It has been a roller coaster living on site with a ginormous dog, a toddler, no kitchen, and a load of builders on every day. Hasn't been the easiest, but we seem to be surviving it. Potentially with a few extra grey hairs, a lot more caffeine and a lot more alcohol intake, but we are getting there. So I'm really excited to show you kind of what's happened. So we started out by stripping out everything, all like the internal furniture. There was a lot of built-in units. Everything we can repurpose, we're repurposing. So a lot of the inbuilt cupboards are coming out, but they are going into different rooms. A lot of it was solid wood. I just did not feel good throwing that stuff out. It might need kind of painting, sanding, redecorating, but I would rather do that than just add loads of stuff to the skip pile. Things that didn't fit, so for example the kitchen island, we sold some items, we put some items in free cycle, just to kind of try and be mindful of how much we were throwing away. The stripping went on for a while and then the walls started coming down, which was really, really exciting, but that is where the problem started to kind of arise. So the bathroom one came down, that was all absolutely fine. We knocked the utility one, that was easy. And then in rolls the wall of doom, which we didn't really anticipate. We knew it was a thick wall. So our understanding of a house is that it was the 18th century farmhouse. It was built in the 1700s, but it was 2 worker cottages, and in each century they added extensions. So this bit of the living room that I'll just show you now, we thought was relatively recent extension, kind of like the last 100 years. To the left, where the kitchen's going to be, we thought that that was from the 80s, judging by the dodgy render and some dodgy building practices that had gone on there. So we were anticipating the wall in between to be brick. So when we first took the breeze block down, we were quite surprised to find lots of stone, a staircase, a fireplace. Well, what our builder thinks is a priest hole. Now that's a bit confusing, because if it was a priest hole, the house would have to be about an extra 100 years older than we initially thought. So we are trying to work out actually what the age of our house is, and I will kind of get onto it in a bit. We found quite a few more clues. Actually at the moment we can only find records back to 1700s, so we are trying to find out exactly how our house started, or perhaps was there something else there beforehand that was demolished and rebuilt. So if anyone's got any ideas on how we can find out some of the history of our house, please let us know. But anyway, with it being an old stone wall, it meant that logistically it wasn't easy to kind of move down. It was quite dangerous. The builders had to have quite a lot of thought into how they were doing it without damaging the structural integrity of the home. It even had things like kind of horsehair, newspaper, all sorts of things. Basically whatever the builder at the time had a hand went into the wall. So it did require an extra steel, so we had to get the engineer back out. There was costs associated with all of that. And where we thought that the wall would take about a day to come down, it ended up taking just over a week to get it down and make it all completely kind of structurally sound. Time is money when it comes to building renovations, so we were instantly kind of on the back foot. But when that was down, it did feel worthwhile. It seemed kind of less scary. I suppose we kind of thought, well, once the gutting's done, hopefully there won't be too many other surprises, but let's see. The next kind of really exciting thing that was happening is we took the back old windows out of the back of the house and we started making way for the bigger openings, kind of obviously just get a lot more light in. Seeing that was pretty exciting, even though it was very, very fleeting. We got to see it for a little bit and then it got boarded up and became very depressing again, but it was nice to have a little bit of a glimpse of what it looked like. When we were taking the windows out and also making the openings bigger on the kind of French doors and making an opening, new French doors going out to the new patio area that had been dug out, we found some other interesting items, which then again made us question the house. We found a beam that was being used in the lintel above French doors, which had building practices that were more prevalent in the 1600s. The builders just presumed that when the house was built, they must have just found that somewhere, reused it, repurposed it, and that's kind of how we kind of got there. But then we started finding, I think they're called square peg holes in the wood as well, which again, building practice was a lot earlier than we were expecting in that part of the house. And then when we took one of the smaller windows out the back, we found what looks to be like some form of arch. So we have no idea what that was. So the windows were boarded up, everything was stripped out. The little kind of second staircase that goes up to where the bathroom's going to be, but also just for guest room, was taken out. And we literally had that, oh my God, what the hell have we done moment, literally. Our house needed a lot of work. We knew that when we bought it, you know, like windows didn't open, things were falling down, like there was damp, cold. But this, it literally looked like, oh my God, we've ruined the house. It was quite scary, it was quite overwhelming, and especially at this point we were still a few weeks in, so a lot further behind than we thought we would be. We ripped up the floors, I was a bit devastated about doing it in the dining room and ripping up the parquet flooring because it was beautiful, but with it being straight onto concrete it was so cold, it wasn't usable. So we actually are going to use the parquet in some furniture. When we ripped up the floor in the living room, the next issue we found. Now, to be fair, it wasn't big. We were really anticipating it. We knew that the living room was wonky. It's an old house. Walls are wonky, ceilings are wonky, nothing's flat. It's part of the charm. You don't buy an old house if you don't want that type of stuff. Now, we thought the ceiling was wonky. When we pulled it up, we realised that there was about a foot gap under the floorboards. No wonder like the living room was so cold, but the floor wasn't even remotely straight. I don't actually know how we hadn't noticed it beforehand. It was that obvious. It wasn't a huge issue because we were planning on levelling out the ground floor anyway. There were a lot of steps in the house. Everything was on different levels, which having toddlers and also just relatives with accessibility requirements, it's not ideal. So it was something that we were going to rectify. So floors came up, in came the digger, which was again, what the hell are we doing? We literally have a digger in the living room, which was quite fun, but also quite daunting. And then there was just rubble everywhere. It was chaotic. It was quite cold at that time as well. Having no windows, no doors, like no floor, it did make the whole house cold. But then we managed to actually stop and pause and think, we've literally finished the bit where everything comes out and it's time for stuff to start going into the house, which I don't know who was more relieved about that, if it was us or us or the builders. But the fact that we had ripped everything out, we decided to try and look at putting it in insulation where possible. Again, with it being an old house, you just got to be really careful with putting in too much insulation. We weren't built the same way. You need to still allow the fact that let the walls breathe so you don't get loads of condensation and mould. Kind of took some advice. We went for some floor insulation, which I was actually surprised at how much difference the floor insulation made instantly. So if you are ripping everything up, it's something, and you don't have floor insulation, I would recommend it. And then we put in wall insulation along the back exterior of the house just to try and make it a little bit warmer. We are trying to make the house as energy efficient as possible, which is challenging when it's such an old home. We do have solar panels on upstairs, which is great. We get all of our hot water from that in the summer. We would like to put in a ground source heat pump or an air heat pump, but it was just way out of our budget. I think technology is advancing so quickly. What we're doing is making the house as energy efficient as possible so that when more technology starts coming out, prices start coming down, we can actually look at installing something. And then what was really exciting was the underfloor heating going down. Underfloor heating has always been something I've dreamt about. When we did our first house renovation, we didn't have the budget for it. We couldn't justify it, so we weren't ripping everything up. It was just kind of decor stuff. Because we were ripping everything up, all the radiators were coming out, everything was getting stripped. All of our radiators were really old and didn't really kind of generate much heat. So we did it, we thought it was worthwhile. Craig kind of got joined in and was labouring with his little stapler gun. A bit of a tip, if you are completely new to renovation, you don't do much DIY, don't be afraid of asking your builders where you can help out, because actually there's quite often labouring jobs that they want you to do. They tend to prefer doing, in our builders case, they tend to prefer doing the more skilled activities. So actually if you go out and help, they're usually quite happy for an extra pair of hands, and by doing that we've learned a few things along the way. So the underfloor heating went in, and then it was time to put the screed down, and then we couldn't get screed. With everything kind of getting pushed behind, it made kind of screed get pushed behind. In our area, there are so many house renovations going on. It's been a backlog since the pandemic. I think anyone renovating at this time has had some form of delays due to items or labour for different reasons. And screed was more expensive than we initially quoted. It eventually managed to find someone. The screed went down, and that was a really exciting moment. We really did feel like the house was starting to come together. You could see it kind of taking shape, and there's something just really satisfying. I don't know if this is just me, but watching this kind of screed go down, and then when you can just see this fresh flat floor that you're not allowed to touch, by the way, until it's dry. But like seeing that was just fantastic, and you can start visualising it becoming a room again, especially when it had just been like a cave for a few weeks. But it did mean that we couldn't have work done in that room while that screed was setting, which again we'd anticipated for, so the builders actually scheduled some holiday in that time, so that kind of worked nicely. It just gave us a little bit of a break from having builders on site. So to summarise, that's where we are at this point. We have ripped everything out and the screed has gone down. My next video I will jump forward probably about another 5 weeks so you can just see what kind of progress has been made then, and I'm hopefully we're going to have some really, really exciting updates for you at that point. In terms of how we're finding it, it's tough. If anyone's lived on a renovation, it definitely has its challenges. We're quite lucky. We've had the space set up a kind of like temporary kitchen. It would have been much, much easier if we didn't obviously have our dog Zora. So she is like a small horse, and like a toddler. It would have been much easier, but renting, we just didn't have the budget to rent a second property. We did look at caravans for the garden, but oh my God, price of caravans during the pandemic. Holy moly, even just hiring, that was like more expensive than hotels, so we just like made do. Hence the really bad setup and random figurines behind me. If anyone can work out what these figurines are from, comment below. If you know, you know. But anyway, we're surviving it. It's worth it. Not complaining, because I know we're lucky to be able to do all of this. We are massively behind schedule. I think phase 1 should have been completed in 12 weeks. We are 9 weeks in, and we haven't even put in the kitchen, plasterboard, all of that stuff. So it is going to take longer than anticipated, but I think if you watch any kind of property program ever, like if you're like me, I binge like literally every property program known to mankind. I watch it. You expect that. You expect things to kind of take longer than what's happening, and with that, your budget takes a hit as well. Not only that, labour costs have gone up during the after effects of the pandemic, and lots of products, but even random things like plaster shortages, etc., all has had its huge impact. That's watching kind of, you want to kind of go back, not be able to have anything to show for it at that point. Everyone keeps telling me we're worth it in the end. So let's keep on praying. That's it. So next video will be showing you a bit of an update. But I am also thinking of just doing a couple of videos with tips on living on a building site, and you know, everything we had to do before we started renovating. If there's anything that you'd be interested in, please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see the journey. And I'll see you next time.